play my intro. Now it's time for the Robb Johnson Sports Show, presented by Robb Johnson Media and the Legacy Maker Sports Network. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Robb Johnson Sports Show, episode 108. Not going to be here for long today. We're going to get more in-depth next week. Next week, I'm going to have more graphics. I'm going to have a video package, all that good stuff. In fact, what I'm going to do for you guys next week is I'm going to have an old school college football on ABC type of package where I do an introduction, Indiana, Miami, etc. I have some video of Fernando Mendoza. I have some footage from, in fact, I have footage from the Miami Hurricanes as well from the 2024 ACC Media Day. I'm going to try to put all that into place. That video package, I'm going to start on that probably on Wednesday and go from there and have that for you guys coming up here on next Monday. But let's talk about the national championship game. Again, we're going to get more in depth on the national championship game next week. We're going to talk more in depth about it, but just a preview of here and now. Again, here and now, the national championship game between the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers and the Hurricanes of Miami. Indiana, undefeated on the season, went through their schedule unscathed. Let's go through their schedule. Let's see who they beat on their road to the national championship. Let's see here. All right, so on their road to the national championship, Indiana beat Old Dominion 27-14. They beat Kennesaw State 56-9. They beat Indiana State 73 to nothing. Illinois, who at the time was a top 10 team, they beat them. They destroyed them 63-10. I think that's when everything started. I think that's when people finally started to realize this Indiana team is different. Now, they did go to Iowa. They won 20-15. Close game, but Iowa's a tough place to play. Next week, they go to Eugene, Oregon. They win 30-20. They play Michigan State in Indiana 38-13. They beat UCLA 56-6, a hot UCLA team, by the way, who I believe they came off the upset of Penn State and a few other upsets as well. They go to Maryland. Maryland, a tough place to play, 55-10. They beat Penn State on the road, 27-24. Penn State, even though they lost their head coach, I'm glad for Coach Franklin. He's now Virginia Tech. This Penn State team underachieved all year, was a lot better team than a lot of people gave them credit for. They beat Wisconsin 31-7. They go to Purdue, never an easy place to play, no matter what their record is, 56-3. They beat Ohio State 13-10 when a lot of people said Ohio State was going to win and dominate that football game. Indiana went in to the Big Ten championship game and beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. Then you have Alabama against Indiana. Now, for the life of me, I cannot understand why so many pundits, especially I see at ESPN, were talking about, oh, this was gonna be an upset. They beat Alabama, it was an upset. Folks, you see, I have my logo, Robb Johnson Media, right here. If you take this logo away and you put something else on, I'm still Robb Johnson Media. At the end of the day, I'm still Robb Johnson Media. But you know, if you change this logo, that's a bad example. That's a bad example. I guess the better example I can put is if you took the names, if you took the red off Indiana and put it on Alabama, took Alabama's red and put it on Indiana, it wouldn't matter. This is a totally different thing. It doesn't matter what the names is. It doesn't matter that Alabama has a tradition of winning national championships. It doesn't matter that Indiana has more of a tradition in basketball. Folks, you have to look at the here and the now. This Indiana team was completely legit. And for them to go in and beat that Alabama team 38-3 says a lot about them, says a lot about their head coach, says a lot about their program at this point. Indiana, for me, when I look back at them, going back to when Michael Penix was there, I think that's when everything kind of started. Everybody says when Cignetti got there, but for me, it's when Michael Penix got there and breathed more life into this program. When Michael Penix came and played his heart out against Ohio State, yes, he had the injury, the torn ACL. He ended up lastly going to Washington, taking him to the national championship game. But I think that Michael Penix and his inspiration of what he brought to that program started the trajectory of this program becoming really good. So they beat Alabama. People call it an upset. I don't call it an upset. It's never an upset because that's how good this team was. You look at when they beat Oregon again, 56-22. Opening the game with an interception, pick six. They dominate. Now they head to Miami Gardens to face who? The Miami Hurricanes. A Miami Hurricanes team who's had a very complicated season. We go to their first game of the year. Everybody had Miami losing. A 13-2 Miami team now, by the way. A team that a lot of people had, and they're 7-1 at home, by the way, going to next week's game. A Miami team that a lot of folks thought coming into the season were going to lose their first game to Notre Dame. Well, they end up beating Notre Dame. They squandered a little bit of a big lead. I think they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame comes back, but Miami has the opportunity to get the field goal. Next, they beat Bethune. They beat them 27-24. They beat Bethune-Cookman 45-3. Next, they play a USF team. Beat them 49-12. Mind you, USF coming off beating Florida was a ranked team, and Miami stomped those guys out. Next, even though it was a close game against Florida, you hear a lot of pundits giving excuses to Florida, but Miami ended up beating Florida. And I think that this Florida game was the reason Miami ended up getting in. Because remember, Texas at the time was still, I believe, top 10, top 7, 8 to 10, top 11, and they lost to Florida. Texas lost to Florida. So that could have ended up helping Miami and hurting Texas, because remember, Texas beat an undefeated Texas A&M at the end of the season. That Florida game, let me just tell you, that Florida game was absolutely huge for Miami. Next week, they're up 28-3 on Florida State. Florida State comes back. They score 19 unanswered. They get back in the game, but Miami wins the game. And that was huge for Miami as well, because remember, Alabama went to Florida State, and they got beat. Miami goes to Florida State, and they win the game. So a lot of people saying Miami did not deserve to be in the playoff. You have to look at the whole totality of the season, what Miami did compared to what other teams did, okay? Now, you go to the next game against the Louisville Cardinal. Miami has always, historically, had issues with Louisville. Why? I can't tell you. Carson back in that game, I believe, had 4 or 5 interceptions in that game. Not a good game at all. Next time they come out, what was this? 8 days later against Stanford, they beat Stanford 42-7. Next, the game against SMU, 26-20. Carson Beck once again turns the football over. SMU, a tough place to play. SMU going against their old offensive coordinator. I talked to them. I talked to SMU players a couple years ago at ACC Media Day. This SMU program is a good program, and they can upset you. So I was not shocked by that. But after that, Miami started to peel off the wins. 30-10 against Syracuse, revenge game, because after Syracuse knocked Miami and Cam Ward out a year before that for them to get to the ACC championship game. Next, they play NC State. Not a bad NC State team, but they blew them out 41-7. Next, Miami goes to the House of Horrors. Virginia Tech, I don't care what their record is. I don't care what Virginia Tech is struggling. Virginia Tech is always a tough place to play for the University of Miami. Miami goes in 34-17. Next, Pitt State, not Pitt State, I'm sorry. The Pittsburgh Panthers. The Pitt Panthers come in this game. They had already lost to Notre Dame, but Miami knew that they had to outlast Notre Dame, score more points than Notre Dame. I believe Pittsburgh had put 15 points in Notre Dame. So the key factor for the Hurricanes in this game was to make sure that they were under 15. Miami did that, 38-7. Now, you go to the college football playoff. Mind you, folks, this is not just any game. This is at Kyle Field at Texas A&M. This is a high noon game at Kyle Field, where Nick Saban himself said they pipe in crowd noise, and it is the loudest stadium in the nation. Miami goes in and wins 10-3. Next, you have Ohio State. This game, the day before New Year's. What was the census thinking? Ohio State, they've got the best receiver in the nation. They've got the best defense in the nation, which they do. They have some really, really good players on that defense that are going in the top 32 picks in this year's NFL draft. No doubt about it. But what did Miami do? A pick six. They played, offense their way. They didn't let Ohio State dictate what they were going to do. They ran the football, which is so critical in football. I understand the passing game is something that everybody loves, and it puts up big numbers, and it sells T-shirts, blah, blah, blah. But the running game and defense wins championships, and this is what Miami did, right? Now you go to the Ole Miss game. This game was absolutely crazy because you have the Ole Miss team who lost their coach, a motivated Ole Miss team. Ole Miss comes down, they make the comeback, they score late. What does Miami do? They drive the field. Carson Beck takes the ball, they snap it to Carson Beck. I believe it was second down. He scrambles to his left. He gets in the end zone. Miami wins. Now, Ole Miss gets the ball back. They're able to drive the ball down the field. They're at the 30-yard line. If Ole Miss had made a kick, well, you can say about both teams because both teams had missed kicks. But Ole Miss had an opportunity. They had an opportunity to win the game. Miami breaks it up. And that had to be a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of Hurricanes fans, especially when they realize you finally get past Ohio State, and you go back to the scene of the crime, the Fiesta Bowl, where you lost the game because in the regulation there was the pass interference. If they had called pass interference on that, it wouldn't have put it at the 1 yard line, but they would have been at the 19 or 20. That would have been deja vu all over for University of Miami Hurricanes fans. Now, they win the game 31-27. Now, the matchup is set. The Indiana Hoosiers against the Miami Hurricanes, Monday, January 19th, 7:30 p.m. It's hard to really put into words the uphill climb that Miami is going to have in this game. Not only do you have to deal with the Indiana defense, not only do you have to deal with really good wide receivers from the Indiana Hoosiers, you're going to have to also deal with Fernando Mendoza. And here's the thing about Mendoza. Mendoza from Miami. I believe, if I have this right, the only team that really recruited him was Cal. And I remember him because a couple of years back, ACC Media Day, Legacy Maker Sports Network, we're talking to Cal. And Cal's talking, and, this tall guy comes up and, like, who was this? It was Fernando Mendoza. And the same bravado, the same confidence that he has now, he had when he was at Cal. How the University of Cal Cal Bears let him go, I have no idea. I do remember when they played Miami, though. He shredded them. He absolutely shredded them. The Cal Bears were playing some good football. Mendoza, when he was at Cal, playing some great football. Miami ended up coming back to win that game because of Cam Ward's his magic. That's all I can say about that. But if Indiana gets up on Miami like they did in that Cal game, there will be no comebacks. There will be no Cinderella story. This Indiana team is not just a flash in the pan. Signetti and this team are going to be here for the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. They're going to be here until some big-time program offers him enough money where he can't refuse. But I don't think he wants to leave Indiana. I think he loves Indiana. And I think people, when they watch this game, they're going to misinterpret once again. They're going to look at the names on the jerseys. They're going to see the University of Miami, and they're going to see Indiana. They're going to think, oh, my God, this is Miami. They're going to run all over it. No. Indiana's got guys from Florida. They've got guys from all over the South. They've got guys from the North. They got guys from the West. Indiana is the favorite in this game. That's how it has to be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that this is going to be an historic upset. But let's be honest. Miami has 2 losses on the season. Both teams played Ohio State. Yes, Miami scored more points than Indiana. But this Indiana team is not to be played with. This Indiana team is the favorite going into this Miami game. Again, I'll have more in-depth stats, more for you guys next Monday or next Monday's 9:30 show, where I'm going to have an epic intro for the national championship game. But right now, Indiana's the favorite, and I have to favor Indiana by at least 2 touchdowns. To me, yes, Indiana is a 2-touchdown favorite as of today against Miami. Unless Fernando Mendoza decides he just wants to go to the Raiders facility now, because that's where it should be. The entire argument of Dante Moore against Fernando Mendoza was probably one of the stupidest arguments I've seen, because Dante Moore, even if he goes into the draft, I think he should get drafted into the teens. If I was him, I'd pray I get drafted into the teens, because then you go to a team. I'd like to see him with the Rams. I think Dante Moore with the Rams would be an absolute steal. Maybe have Matthew Stafford come back one more year. He sits under him, and then he plays the next year. Learn that Sean McVay tree. Going to the Jets, going to the Browns, not a good. I don't think that's where he wants to go. And I think those teams. I think the Jets will be better going forward. We'll have to see with the Browns, especially with the coaching. But coaching matters. Unless Fernando Mendoza goes to the Raiders facility now and starts practicing, because we already know he would be the #1 overall pick, I think that Miami is in a little bit of trouble. Now, that Miami, what's going to save them is that defense. But what Miami ultimately needs, they need that offense to show up. They need Carson Beck and Malachi to really give them something. Now, their other receivers, they played better against Ole Miss. Ole Miss was very physical. That's one thing I don't think a lot of people gave that team credit for. Now, yes, Lane Kiffin left, but he had some damn good players on that football team. Really good players on that football team. And I think sometimes we give the coach so much credit. We don't give the players enough kudos on what they are doing. That's a very good Ole Miss team, not only from an offensive standpoint, but in the trenches, they play good football. Now, one of the other thing that helps Miami, their offensive line with Maunoy and all those guys, they are so tough. However, you're going to have to deal with that Indiana front, a very athletic back. The secondary. I believe that this Indiana team right now, again, is a 14 to 15-point favorite today against the University of Miami. Now, historically, you look at Miami, they go back to 1983 or the 1984 Orange Bowl. They played Nebraska. They beat that Nebraska team. That Nebraska team was considered one of the great teams of all time. They somehow beat them. Okay? You look at Miami when they played Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma somehow, some way. Miami has always come up with ways to beat the odds. Now, this game being in Miami, Florida, will it help that Fernando Mendoza is from there and he'll have fans, and will Indiana travel? Yes. But this will also be incumbent on the Miami Hurricane fans to fill that stadium with nothing but orange and green. If we come to Monday night and Indiana Hoosier fans have taken over that stadium, it's a bad look for Miami. It's a bad look all the way. Out of Miami's 5 national championships, they've won 3 of those at home. 2 of their national championship games against Nebraska, which was in 01-02, that was at the Rose Bowl. The 90, what was it? Was it 89? I think the 90-91, the 91-92, I think it was the 91 national championship against Alabama was at the Sugar Bowl. And then there are other 3, of course. You got Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Those were at the Orange Bowl, where they won those other 3 national championships. 83, 87, 89, 91, 01. So those were the years Miami won those national championships. And again, three national championships for the Miami Hurricanes at the old Orange Bowl, this Hard Rock Stadium. So we'll definitely see how it goes. But again, folks, next week, more in-depth, a classic ABC or college football ABC intro from me coming to you guys. I know it's going to be copywritten. I really don't care. I just want it to look good. I want you guys to share it, etc. Also, tonight, we have Gold Standard Wrestling at 11:30 p.m. Now, I'm going to be navigating 2 things. I got the football game on. I'm going to have Monday Night Raw on, getting all the content. We're going to talk about Drew McIntyre. We're going to talk about him winning the championship. We're going to talk about SmackDown. I may even try. I'm trying to get some AEW in. If I can't get AEW in this week, I'll definitely get some AEW in next week. We're gonna start doing WWE, TNA, all that good stuff. AEW, all that NXT. We're gonna get all that stuff in here going soon with Gold Standard Wrestling. But again, Gold Standard Wrestling is tonight, and then tomorrow at 9:30, I have the huge show where I go 11 through 21 in the college football draft and the high NFL draft, and then I talk about the NFL playoffs and some other good topics tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. And that'll be episode 109 of the Robb Johnson Sports Show. But again, for episode 108 of the Robb Johnson Sports Show, I have the Indiana Hoosiers as a 14 to 15 point favorite over the Miami Hurricanes. That's how it has to be. That's how I have to put it. I have to be fair, fan or not. That you got to be fair. And right now, the Hoosiers are the better team. I think the Hoosiers are going to win this game as of today. Now, could Miami upset them? You're daggone right they can. You saw the schedule, or you heard the schedule that I gave you guys. Indiana at times this year has had some inconsistent games, but most of their season has been consistent. So we just have to go off that. We'll have to see what Miami team shows up next week. We'll have to see what Indiana team shows up. It should be an epic national championship game between the Miami Hurricanes and the Indiana Hoosiers. And again, next week, 9:30 a.m., more in depth, etc. when it comes to this national championship game. Just today, which is a quick preview, episode 108 of the Robb Johnson Sports Show. I will see you all tonight at 11:30 p.m. for Gold Standard Wrestling.